We pick up King 9 suited in the $10 blind. We'll just call it under the gun since we have two other players in the blinds to our right. Under the gun +1 straddles to 20. The button raises to 60. His name's Matt. I played with him a handful of times in Texas. He's maybe the best cash game player in town. With the straddler behind me, I'm treating this as if I'm in the small blind and I 3-bet to 200. Had I had an opportunity to close the action, I would have just called the initial raise. Under the gun +1 doesn't see that I 3-bet and calls to 60. Once he realizes it's 200 to call, he wishes that he could have folded. It's another strange situation because he's not really supposed to be allowed to take his 60 back. Matt is a stickler for the rules and tries to clear up the confusion by chiming in. I don't want to win someone else's money that he genuinely put in as a mistake, so I want to try and let him know that if he folds and I win the pot, I'd give him back his $60, but I don't want to make it seem too much like I want the opponents to fold.
140 to call, 0 to fold. No, that's yours.
You called 60.
If I win, oh well, we'll see what happens. I guess.
I'll give you. Okay, now we're all just playing poker.
Under the gun +1 makes things simpler by calling. Matt calls as well. We're going three ways to the flop against someone who I think has a bad hand and someone who I think has something mediocre like a low or medium pocket pair, suited connectors, or suited Broadway cards aside from ace-king or maybe even ace-queen. The flop comes king-queen 5 rainbow. We've got top pair and a backdoor straight flush draw. What's better is that I have a huge range advantage with two Broadway cards out there after 3-betting and only getting called. I'll have extremely strong hands like sets of kings and queens, as well as aces and ace-king that my opponents almost definitely won't have. After under the gun +1 showed hesitation before ultimately calling the 3-bet for 140 more, it's unlikely that he'd even have a set of 5s, and probably won't have king-queen, which are the only super strong hands that the button could have. With us having a king, there are only two combos of king-queen suited that the button would have definitely called a 3-bet with. I suppose he probably would have called pre-flop with king-queen offsuit as well, but that's still only a total of 6 king-queen combos and 3 set of 5 combos that I need to be concerned about him raising me with. Because of that, I can sort of bet with impunity here. I make it 350. Under the gun +1 folds right away. The button is contemplating how he wants to proceed. Eventually he calls. It's down to heads up. The turn is the 8 of clubs. I would have preferred it to be a heart, not a bad card though. At this point, it's tough to be sure if we're ahead or not. We're losing against a set of 5s, king-queen, king-jack, and king-10, but we're ahead of ace-queen, ace-10, jack-10, perhaps queen-jack and queen-10 suited type of hands as well. Maybe even some 10-9 or 7-6 suited hands also. I go very large with my sizing since I have the range advantage and good card removal against a lot of combos that are beating me. I bet 1200. This amount charges the button significantly for draws, particularly if he has clubs and doesn't want to fold. If the button has 2 pair or a set and happen to be trapping on the flop, I'd expect to hear from him right now. He just calls, making me think that he either has exactly 1 pair or some sort of strong draw. The river is the deuce of hearts, it's a complete blank. What's interesting about the board run out and the way that this hand has been played so far is that I don't think the opponent is going to want to put any more money in the pot regardless of what his actual holding is. If he has a missed draw, he won't be calling a bet, although if I check, he may jam for 34.50 effective in a last-ditch effort to steal the pot from me. He's a good enough player to know that shoving on the river wouldn't make a ton of sense though, and I'll certainly check as a trap on occasion with really strong hands. If the button has something like ace-queen or queen-jack of clubs, he would surely check back. If he has king-jack or king-10, he'll be checking back as well since this pot has gotten large, and I probably wouldn't call a bet of his with anything worse. The button may call a small or medium-sized bet with king-jack or king-10, but he won't love it after I 3-bet and bet all 3 streets. It'd be only a bluff catcher. Since I anticipate only being up against holdings that can't call large bets, I consider turning my hand into a semi-bluff of sorts, in the sense that if I jam for 34.50, I expect to be ahead half the time or more, but the hands that I put my opponent on that are beating me will almost for sure have to fold, so I'm bluffing him off of those. The opponent throws his cards into the muck immediately. I imagine that we had the best hand and didn't necessarily need to turn top pair into a bluff. It just all but guaranteed that we'd win the pot unless the opponent could find a difficult call, which is a slightly better 1 pair. Typically, I don't turn hands with value into big bluffs. This was just a unique situation in which I felt in the moment it was going to give us the victory a huge percentage of the time, particularly after everyone at the table saw me overbet for value on the river earlier with pocket kings after I 3-bet pre-flop there too. Matt is a great guy and is cool enough to share what he had for the vlog. Jack 10.
Ace 10 of clubs.
Here we pick up king 9 suited under the gun +1. There's a straddle out there. I raised to 30. 4 players call. We're going 5 ways to the flop. It comes ace 8 4 rainbow. Not much going on for us in this hand or seemingly anyone else who still has cards. We all check. The turn is the king of diamonds, giving us second pair. It's check to me. If the big blind or under the gun player had an ace, they probably would have bet by now. If the middle position opponent or the hijack had an ace, one of them probably would have bet on the flop. I could be best with a king. I put out a small bet of 40. I don't want to make it too big just in case someone's lurking around with an ace or a better king. 3 opponents call. No one seems to be very happy though. They just didn't want to let me win with a tiny bet. I'm planning to shut down. Then the dealer puts out another king. We're back open for business, dudes. We've got trips. Checks to me. I'm really hoping that someone has an ace at this point. I bet 120 for value. The hijack folds. The big blind's in the tank. He knows that it's down to him and the under the gun opponent to keep me honest. He's not sure if under the gun will be able to make the call, so the big blind puts his foot down and matches my bet. He's not going to let me bluff this one. Under the gun folds. I show that there's no bluff this time. King 9's good. We get a great run out in a multi-way pot, and we get paid off on the river. The bet sizes weren't that large, but with so many opponents calling pre-flop and on the turn, we profit $400 on the hand and are up $350 on the day. We're back to even on the session, and we pick up King 9 suited under the gun +2. I raised to 15. Cutoff calls. The small blind has been the most aggressive person pre-flop at the table, and it's been a pretty aggressive table. He 3-bets to 60. I have another pure fold. I don't feel like doing that when the small blind is untrustable. I 4-bet to 225. That's right, we're here to play. The cutoff folds. The small blind may not have 3-bet me light. He calls. This could be a dicey situation since the pot is already large. Don't worry, dudes. The flop comes King 9-4 with 2 clubs. We've got top 2 pair and a 4-bet pot. I feel like dancing in the street. The small blind checks. We've got pretty much the nuts. I down bet to 150 to get calls out of hands like queens, jacks, and maybe 10s. The player doesn't look thrilled. Looks like he's missed, and we've got everything, so he probably did. The price is just too good for him. The small blind calls. The turn is the queen of hearts. Not great because there's a chance that we're up against pocket queens, or maybe even king queen or jack 10 for the straight. The small blind checks. I check back for pot control. I probably should have bet. The river is the 7 of hearts, so the backdoor flush gets there. The small blind checks. I'm not checking back again. I bet 450. My line should look odd after letting the opponent see a free river. I'd hate to get check raised because there's at least a small chance that the small blind could have a hand containing 2 hearts. Not much time goes by before the opponent folds. I let him know that he made the right decision.
Good fold.
That's a fun one. Yeah, we had to show that we're 4-betting with King 9 since this table needs to get the message that we're out for blood. We're dealt King 9 suited on the button about 15 minutes later. The straddle is on, and the same opponent who we beat in the last hand raises to 60 from the cutoff. Our hand should be a pure 3-bet under these conditions, but we miss it and just call. The under the gun straddler calls as well. We're going 3 ways at the flop in position. It's 4 deuce deuce rainbow, about as uninteresting as it gets. We all check. The turn is the jack of spades, giving us a flush draw. Under the gun checks. The cutoff checks. We could take a stab at it. This time, I choose to try and realize our equity. I check back. The river is the 9 of clubs. We break the flush draw, but we pick out the pair. Under the gun checks. The cutoff checks. There's almost no way that we'll be beat when it checks to us 3 times. This is a spot in which it's relatively safe to go for value, second pair, and multiple opponents. I bet 75. Maybe we can get looked up by a worse 9, or perhaps a smaller pocket pair that doesn't believe that we've connected. Under the gun looks like he's trying to pass a kidney stone as he makes the call. It's pretty clear he's not that strong. I figure that we've got the winner. The cutoff is tired of watching us win pot after pot against him tonight. After checking 3 times, he all of a sudden decides to rep a big hand and raises to 450. The story he's trying to tell is more fictional than Garth Brooks' career as Australian rock star Chris Gaines. That's right, we're throwing that reference back. I mean, have you seen this picture of Garth Brooks? Anyway, this is a fun spot to bluff catch. After only a few seconds of thinking, I call for 375 more. Under the gun folds immediately, and the cutoff mucks immediately. He doesn't even want to let us know what he has or find out what we called him light with. It makes me a little sad because a big part of me wants to let him know that we owned his soul. A bigger part of me thinks that it's more fun not to show it all. We take down a larger pot than we should have. These are key spots that might not be all that intuitive for a lot of recreational players. It's a pretty easy decision to call when you think back on the action of previous streets, coupled with the fact that we have removal to a hand like pocket 9s, pretty much the only likely hand that the cutoff might have played that way that has us beat, but even that's a stretch after he checked the flop. Here we've got King 9 of hearts in the cutoff. Only a few minutes later, I raise to 100. Small blind calls. He's the person that we bluffed earlier with 10-8 of clubs when he folded a pair of kings on the turn. Then we got there on him with ace-queen after. The under the gun straddler calls. That's my buddy Jake from State Farm, who made his vlog debut back in episode number 2 when we went to Loft one together. We're going 3 ways to the flop in position. It comes Jack 8-7 with 2 hearts. We smother this one with our flush draw, gutter, and 1 over. Checks to me. I'm content to take a stab in order to potentially win this pot right now, or build it in case we drill the turn or river. I bet 220. If we get check raised, we can make a call in position. Small blind takes a look at his cards. Maybe he wants to see if he's holding a heart. He calls. Under the gun folds quickly. It's heads up. The turn is the 6 of diamonds, putting a second flush draw on the board, and giving us an open-ended straight draw. The small blind will not be put in a box. You don't really want to be putting people in boxes anyway. He leads for 600. There's an interesting line that's a bit unorthodox. We've got removal to the nuts. A heart, 5, or 10 should give us the best hand as well. I call to see if we can get there. We're 80% there, just not quite all the way. The river is the 4 of diamonds, the backdoor flush gets there, and there's now 4 to the straight on board. Just not a straight that we've got. I'm totally disappointed in the run out. It feels like I just tried to buy a $20 copper engravement of Lincoln on eBay and was sent a penny in return. The small blind may not like this river though. He slows down his horses and checks. I can still rep strong hands like straights and flushes. So far, I played this like I had a big draw, because I absolutely did. A ton of draws got there on the river. I happen to miss all of them, but the opponent doesn't know that, and I sense fear. I bet 1100 to fold out all 1-pair hands and maybe some better ace-x of hearts hands. This even puts 2-pair holdings in a tough spot. I didn't make it that much, so it kind of looks like I want to get called, which is even scarier. The small blind makes the fold once more when we need him to. He's probably getting tired of us getting the best of him. It's a fairly substantial pot that we steal with what's the worst hand that we'll have in this situation. We're up almost 9,000 and we're still going. Next, we're dealt King 9 suited in the under the gun straddle. Mo's first to act on our left. He calls the 20. The cutoff isn't going to let anyone limp in. He raises to 100. We've got a fun hand to see a flop with, plus we're getting a discount. I call for 80 more. Mo isn't afraid of a raise. He calls to close the action. We're going 3 ways to the flop out of position. It comes ace 9-5 with 2 spades. We have just enough of a piece to potentially get us into trouble. Checks to the pre-flop raiser. He makes a small wager of 75. It's actually a law in Texas that you're not allowed to fold second pair when you're getting 5-1 or better. I can't go back to prison. I call. Under the gun +1. It doesn't take too long before he makes a decision. He calls as well. We're all still in it. The turn is the 4 of clubs. It puts a second flush draw on the board, but it's mostly a blank. I check. Under the gun +1 checks. I expect the cutoff to charge full steam ahead with a strong top pair or better. Instead, he pumps the brakes and checks back, making it unlikely that he's holding an ace. Maybe he just has something like queens, jacks, or possibly only some unpaired Broadway cards. The river's the 10 of diamonds. I'm not 100% sure that we're going to be able to win this with third pair. We've got some showdown value, but is it good enough? The cutoff didn't seem to love his hand on the turn, but he might have made a pair of 10s on the river, or he could have a high pocket pair to beat us. Any 1-pair hand that he'll have below aces is going to have a very tough time calling a bet though. Mo hasn't showed much strength either. He limp called pre-flop, then called a tiny bet when he was getting over 6-1. We could have him beat, or maybe he made a better pair than us on the river as well. Either way, both players probably won't like facing a bet from us when we could reasonably have top pair or better. I bet 325, ideally to get both opponents to fold a second pair type of combo. Mo's taking his time to consider whether or not to call. Eventually he folds. He's who I was most concerned about. The cutoff also isn't quick to let go. Feels like our pair isn't good, but the cutoff folds as well. We'll never know whether or not we were bluffing or if we had the best hand. We get the win though. With this pot coming our way, we're up about 450.